In the decades that I've been a pastor, Christians have followed fads. One fad after another. One craze after another. You can think of it in book titles. This Present Darkness. And all of a sudden, everybody was cleansing houses and praying over things and casting out demons. And this was the solution to our powerlessness as Christian people. We were to be engaged in spiritual warfare, and this was going to solve this problem. Codependent no more. This is what we've been missing for 2,000 years as Christians. Codependency is the explanation for all of our relational problems, and if we would just address this, then this would resolve the family crises that we all struggle with, and the crisis of addiction. And you might go forward to books by Reformed thinkers, resurgent Reformed thinkers in the 1990s and the 2000s. We were just talking about Mark Dever in the Sunday School Hour, and you can think about 9 Marks and church planting movements and back to the Puritans. This is going to solve all of our problems. The crisis of understanding who God is and what Christianity is. This is the solution. The Shack. Whatever the latest movie is. It was The Passion of the Christ a number of years ago. This year it's another one that's going to change Christianity in America. I've been listening to this for all of these decades. You know what I see in all of this? Just an unstable, immature, fad-following, shallow, and very often, sadly, fanatical set of people being formed by one craze after another. And it has done us no good. It has led to all sorts of church hopping, a flippant treatment of relationships. It has led to people basically roving around with their friend groups from one church to another. And there are people you can tell they're going to be at the cool church for a little while, but in 5 years, in 3 years, they won't be there anymore. They'll be on to the next thing. And, it's all the body of Christ. It's all Christians here, so it doesn't matter if we shift from church to church. And it has led to that. It has led to churches absolutely exploding in attendance. Mega churches in every town and every county, we have seen the rise of charismatic leaders, and their attendance explodes, their subscribers explode, they're making all sorts of ministries and bringing in all sorts of contributions, and then they're gone in the space of a very short time because of some scandal or other. We look at all of this instability. There's nothing so telling about American Christianity as this feeling of being blown around by every wind of doctrine, as Ephesians says. This feeling that wherever the waves take us, that's where we're going. Because we can't really steer. We can't really navigate. We can't really pick a direction and go there. We're just drifting along wherever God takes us. Beloved, there's something at the center of this instability that I want to address with you from now until the end of June. But really, it's something that we'll be addressing for a very long time as a church. At the center of this instability is our concept of God. We have a low view of God. We have a view of God that treats him like an app. He's customizable. You can configure the app God to do what you want him to do. When you download God, you can set the notifications. Do you want to hear from God weekly? Daily? Let's try monthly. Do you want God to have access to your location? Or is it only while you're using God that you want him to know your location? Well, it's only when I'm actually using him. What sorts of topics, what sort of content do you want from this app? While you're using God, how do you want your feed structured? God has an algorithm, you know. He can send you exactly what you need. So, do you want emotional health? Oh, yes, I want that. Do you want God to send you content about politics? Definitely, even though that destroys my emotional health. But nevertheless, I want to know what God says about politics. What about relationships? Do you want to know what God has? Yes, check that box. Doctrine? Nah. No. If I have questions, I'll just search End Times or something. But if I want to know, I can find it out. Our God is an app. He's real. He works. But you choose what he does for you. The Bible has a term for this. The term is idolatry. And the reality is that much of American evangelical life is centered on straight-up idolatry. And we've got Bible verses for it. I mean, all of these things have a Bible verse attached, some of them more than others. Some of them are claim to go very deeply into the Bible. But the Bible is always this, it's always this tool that we use for customizing God. And you can customize him any way you want. There's a Bible verse for everything. And so, alongside our view of God, which is low, we have a view of the Bible, which is also low. Evangelicals today desperately need to find an abiding knowledge of God. Who is God? What is he doing? What is my relationship to him and what he is doing? How do I adapt to him? These are the questions that evangelicals, by and large, are not asking, because we're basically all about ourselves, our projects, and our enthusiasms, and we're especially about our needs as we perceive them. And so, when I say to you that we are going to work with a key, one key, just one, there are many, but we're going to start with one, a key that unlocks the whole Bible. Part of us is responding to this, why? The parts of the Bible that I need, I already know. Are you going to repeat the parts that I already know in some different way so that I can use them better in my life? Well, no. We're going to venture into parts of the Bible that are not well known. And though they may be known a little bit, at a kind of surface level, they're poorly put together. And so one of our goals in this series is to change our relationship with the Bible so that it becomes less this maze of incomprehensible stories and unsettling characters, and that we have a very on and off relationship with. We need to change that relationship to one that says the Bible is the key to knowing God and to having a deep understanding of who he is, how I relate to him, what he is doing in this world, and how I relate to what he is doing. The Bible is the key to that. at bottom, those who have a high view of God are a submissive people. We see God and we say, I will yield to him. And we open the pages of Scripture as we're doing right now. I will yield to the Scriptures. I will yield my mind. I will yield my desires. And I will open myself up to all that God says. One reason that I want to do this series is because according to Paul in the book of Acts, when he said goodbye to the Ephesian elders, he said, I preached to you the whole counsel of God, all of it, from front to back. And that is part of the duty of a pastor. So whether it is an easy sell or a hard sell, whether it looks like fun or it looks like something, a venture into something very strange, it is my duty and my privilege to open to you the whole counsel of God. So these are some of the things in our agenda over the next number of weeks. And the one key that we're going to look at, we're going to start with, that unlocks the whole Bible is something we call the Abrahamic covenant. We just read it in Genesis 12, 1 through 3. It is the promise that God made to Abraham, the promise that he would take Abram to a country and give him land and make him a blessing to all nations. Why is this so important? What does it have to teach us about God? We're going to be answering these questions, and I'm going to be showing you how vital this one covenant is to understanding every other part of Scripture, including who Jesus is and why he came. So let's dive in. We're going to begin by asking this question: how does the Bible narrate our human crisis? How does the Bible tell the story about what happened when we fell into sin? How does it describe the consequences of that? And how does the Bible define the problem that we have, the crisis that we're in, where we're either going to go to life or we're going to go to death? How does the Bible describe this? I want to take you through some of the early chapters in Genesis and show you some patterns, beginning with the serpent in Genesis chapter 3. You know the story. The man and the woman, Adam and Eve, ate the forbidden fruit. Eve, enticed and deceived by the serpent, Adam willfully and knowingly taking what God had forbidden. So this is what they have done, and the Lord has confronted them, and he is now confronting the serpent himself. And he says this, verse 15, I will put enmity between you, serpent, and the woman. Well, that's interesting. He doesn't say I'm going to put enmity between you, serpent, and Adam. It's between you and the woman. You deceived her. I am going to pit you against her and her against you. And you know what? She's going to win. Her seed, her offspring, is going to crush your head, even though you strike at his heel. So here we are at the fall of human beings. And right in that moment, God says, here's the whole plan. Here's how this is going to shake out. Serpent, this is Satan, you are going to be crushed. You are going to lose. So this is the spoiler for the whole rest of the Bible, all the way down to Revelation. God wins. But we know this from the beginning. The serpent is crushed. And the person who is going to do the crushing is the seed of Eve. Eve gets her just revenge and her salvation through this seed. And so she is expecting this person, this offspring. And so the whole Bible and the whole story of the Bible is about generations. It's about the offspring who go this way and the offspring who go this way. The offspring who go off to death and wickedness, and the offspring who go to life through faith. It's these two kinds of generations. If you want to know why your Bible, especially in the early parts, is full of genealogies, this is why. It is documenting for you, these are the people who marched off to death, and these are the people who trusted God and went into life. And it starts with Eve, and the problems between these two lines begin right away. We come to Cain and Abel. Cain is Eve's firstborn. Cain, the first baby ever delivered on the face of the earth, the first human baby, born to Eve. And she says in chapter 4, I've gotten a man with the help of the Lord. The Lord gave me this baby, and she has a second-born named Abel. 2 lines. There's the serpent's line, those who follow him, and there's the line of faith, those who follow the Lord and trust his promise. Which son is in which line? Same mother, but they have different origins in that sense, and they have different destinies. So Cain murders Abel. You know the story. Abel believed God had brought a blood sacrifice for his sins. Cain did not. God approved the blood sacrifice and not the little token grain that Cain brought. And the Lord received Abel and justified him and said to Cain, sin is crouching at your door and it's going to take over your life. You must master it. Cain does not master it. Cain murders his younger brother Abel. And where does this leave Eve? She's got this promise from God that her offspring, an offspring of faith, is going to crush the serpent. And now it looks like generation 1, the serpent is won. How is this ever going to go forward if the serpent keeps winning and the people of faith keep dying out? Well, it looks pretty bad. Cain finds a wife, founds a city, and they have children. And look at chapter 4 of Genesis. You get a genealogy here in verse 17 and 18, and that genealogy takes us to a guy named Lamech. Lamech is the first polygamist recorded in the scriptures. The first guy to say, one wife, I want 2. So he gets 2. And here's a little song that he sang to them to impress them. This is the first kind of gangster rap here. Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. So somebody came up to me and just tweaked me a little bit. I killed him. Watch this, verse 24. If Cain's revenge is 7-fold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. This is a boasting song. And he's saying, I am not going to take nothing from nobody. Nobody strikes me and gets away with it. So he sings this song about himself to his wives. That's where the world is headed. The violence is already, in these early generations, is already out of control. And what is this about? It's revenge. It's you humiliated me, or you tried. I'll show you. I'll kill you. Question: what's happening in our country today? Violence everywhere you look. Just a thought. So, what's going to happen here? If the promise to Eve and the curse on the serpent is Eve's descendant is going to crush your head, you lose. Well, it looks like he's winning. Well, look at verse 25 of chapter 4. Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth. For she said, God has appointed for me, that's the word Seth, another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. So she's saying, I've got another answer to this promise that God gave me when he cursed the serpent. He has appointed another heir. My faithful son Abel was killed by Cain, but he has given me Seth, another son. This story is going to go on to future generations. Watch this very closely, verse 26. To Seth also a son was born, and his name was Enosh. So now we've got the continuation of the line of people following the Lord. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord, the oldest form of worship in human history, calling on the Lord's name, saying, save us, help us, redeem us. And why did they do that? Because they saw the generation is going forward. Faith is going forward. So, you see, chapter 5, a genealogy. One of these wonderful things that nobody wants to pay attention to. What it's documenting is that line of faith went forward for hundreds of years. The line of faith advanced. But then we get to chapter 6. And in chapter 6, we get another moment where we just ask, how is this ever going to go forward? Because the line of faith is first corrupted and then it's dying out. And the world is being overcome by all of this violence. So, it's a very strange story. Lots of people claim to know what happened here. I'll just tell you, we don't know what happened here, except what it says here in these verses. When man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever. He is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Lord intervenes and says, I'm going to shorten man's lifespan because of this unique sexual immorality here, this taking of the daughters of men. Two prominent theories about what happened here. One is that angels took human wives and procreated with them out of lust. It's possible. There are some texts that refer to angels as the sons of God, not very many. In the context of Genesis, which is where we should start determining the meaning of this story, there are two lines. There's the line of corruption and the serpent, and there's the line of believing God and calling on his name. The line of the sons of God in this other theory would be those who have called on the name of the Lord, but they look over and they see, they've got some pretty nice looking women over there in the other line. And so they take wives from the other line, the line that is dedicated to violence and the serpent. And that is the theory that I hold. because I believe that's what Genesis is teaching. Regardless of which theory you side with, the point of this story is very significant. There is an increase in sexual immorality, and there is an increase then in violence. And so you get these giants of legend, verse 4, on the earth and also afterwards. And they seem to have been the children of these unions. And these were the mighty men of old. Look at verse 5, one of the most important verses in the Bible. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. This is a statement of what we call the depravity of human beings. That no matter what you do, no matter advances in technology, like happened in chapter 4, no matter advances in dwelling places, like happened in the invention of a city in Genesis 4, no matter what happens in the increase of sexual immorality, like has happened here in Genesis chapter 6, violence just increases. That's all that happens. So the Lord was sorry that he made man on the earth. He said, I will blot them out. What's verse 8? You know this story. Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. You know what this comes down to over and over and over again? The line of the serpent gets bigger, but there's one guy left. There's one woman left. There's one family left. And they believe God. And the Lord intervenes, and he restarts the story with them. So that's really the story of Noah. Noah is that guy in that generation. So you say, whew, okay, so we cleared that hurdle. So now the generations are all going to go forward, and everything's going to be fine. Well, you know how the story of Noah ends. It ends with one of his sons committing sexual immorality and carrying the sexual immorality from the pre-flood into the post-flood. So the sin lives on, and it lives on in generations. And so you know that that's how the story ends. And human beings are going all over the earth. Look at chapter 11. Another advance in technology here. The whole earth had one language and the same words. Chapter 11, verse 1. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and dwelled there, settled there. That plain is Iraq today. And they said to one another, here's the technological advance, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. So they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. This is an advance because you no longer have to quarry the stone. You can just manufacture it right there. What would happen if you could just make stones like that? Well, you could build a great city. You could build a high tower. And in fact, they build a ziggurat, a tower whose top reaches into the sky, and you can still see these in modern-day Iraq. It's a tower, it looks like a pyramid with a square top, and it's got a maze going up to the top, and that's how you worship God. All of the gods and the astrology and the stars and the sun and whatever you want to do, you just build a ziggurat and you worship them that way. And so why do they do this? They said, come, let us build ourselves, verse 4, a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. And the Lord looks at this and says, well, the line of the serpent is winning again. Its power is advancing again, and if they succeed, if they really do come together and they found this city and they are able to make a name for themselves, and politically their power grows, nothing will stop them. By the way, one of the lures that dangles in front of Christians in every generation, but especially in our generation, is politics. And politics as a source of power, as a source of a way of accomplishing what you think needs to happen. It goes all the way back to Babel. Babel becomes Babylon and becomes an enemy of God right down to the last pages of the Bible. So what we have here is the story seeming to come to a halt again. We've had all these generations of faithful people. Noah had faithful people, but the faithful people are getting overwhelmed again. And now it looks like the unfaithful people, the line of the serpent, they are going to have a city. They're going to have all the power. They're going to be able to draw everyone to themselves. They will make a name for themselves. So God stops them. He divides them by confusing their language. He disperses them from there all over the face of the earth. I just want you to notice something about the way God works. When it looks like evil is out of control and gaining power, God intervenes and breaks it up. How interesting. That he puts limits on the growth of evil. And so whether it's politics or technology or sexuality, it doesn't matter. God intervenes and says, you go this far, but you're not going further. Sin will not win, even in this world. So that brings us to the man we read about earlier, the man who was blessed. So just to summarize here, how does the Bible narrate the human crisis? Human beings are running from their inheritance of death. They keep trying to overcome it. Sometimes they try to overcome it with sexual immorality. Sometimes they try to overcome it with technology, yea, AI. Sometimes they try to overcome it with politics and that kind of power. But no matter what they do, they cannot outrun their inheritance from Adam, the inheritance of death. They will die. And God will crush that serpent in the end. But at various points in this story, early on in the book of Genesis, it looks like this whole project of destroying the serpent is never going to succeed. It's going to die with this person or with that person or with the next person. And so here we are, post-Babel, and everybody's scattered around the world, and there's idolatry all over the place, and we land in verse 27 of Genesis chapter 11. Now these are the generations of Terah. Pro tip on the Old Testament, and especially the book of Genesis, when you see these words, these are the generations of, this is Moses telling you, I am refocusing the story here, new section, fade to black, the scene comes back up, and we're in a new place, new time, and the story is starting a new chapter. So what's this new chapter? Well, it's this guy Terah. And we get a little bit of a genealogy of Terah. He was the last guy in the genealogy of chapter 11. And he has a little family, and he lives in this place called Ur of the Chaldees, very advanced civilization for its time. And he leaves there, it says, in chapter 11, verse 31. He took his family, Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, Abram's wife, Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldees to go into, where? The land of Canaan. He starts a big, big journey. Terah does. Takes his family along, and he's going to Canaan. Why? Why is he headed there? What's in Canaan that would interest him? Well, we're not really sure at this point because he never gets there. He gets a few miles to the west and he stops. He finds a nice place in Haran and he stops there and settles there. So he never makes it to Canaan. And then he dies. Joshua tells us that Terah was an idolater. You know, one of those people who customize a god. One of those people who view God as a piece of technology that I use to accomplish my ends. Joshua tells us that Terah had idols with him, and so he leaves to go to Canaan, and he stops and doesn't go there. Why was he going to Canaan? Because he was told to. That's why. And he didn't go. Does the Lord respond with defeat, saying, oh, boy, I told him to go, and doggone, he didn't go. I guess I just got to give up here. No. That is the context for Genesis 12, verses 1 through 3. How is this going to go forward? How are we ever going to crush this serpent? We're losing offspring here, and even the heirs of faith through Shem in chapter 11, even those guys don't believe anymore. Question. Are you feeling alone in your faith in God? You feel like your people are getting smaller? Like it's getting tougher? You feel like all of this new stuff is happening and I can't overcome it. The power on the other side is too great. It's luring away my family. I'm looking at the death of faith in a few generations. I can't make this work, and I don't see how this is going to go forward. Or maybe you're looking at this and you're saying, Terah, right here, God is my app, and I make him do what I want him to do, or at least I try, and I've constructed my own God, and maybe it hasn't worked real well, so I've started calling my gods different names from the ones that I inherited. I don't call him Jesus anymore. Maybe I call him Buddha. Maybe it's technology. Maybe it's some other form of worship. But that's me. I've lost it. I don't believe this anymore. So I'm stopping right here, and I'm just going to live my best life now. Oops, I didn't mean to impugn idolatry there. Sorry, not sorry. So what does the Lord do at this hopeless moment? Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Now Yahweh said to Abram, Terah's son, guy who grew up under idolatry and faithlessness. And he talks to him in Haran, which was supposed to be the rest stop on the way to Canaan, but became home. Yahweh said to Abram, go. Leave. Go from your country and your kindred. What does that mean? The place where you've settled, where you're established, where it's good. Leave it. Leave the people you know, the people you're closest to, the people who speak your language, literally. Leave them. And leave your father's house. Get out. Depart from the way you were raised. Do it different. Go. Friends, this is one of those moments in the Bible that is just like an epic-making decision, where one man hears from God what he needs to do, and he believes God, and he does it. And the world hinges on this moment. Leave your father's house, go to the land that I will show you. It's Canaan. I told your father to do it. He didn't do it. You're stuck in Haran, or Haran, or however you want to say it. So get off your duff and do what I told your father to do. Go to Canaan. Now here's a promise. Here's what's amazing about this promise. There are no conditions on this promise. None. It's not like, if you do what I told you to do, then I will do this. No. It's just, you're going to do what I tell you to do. I'm taking over here, and I'm sending you there. And as you go there, I'm going to do this unconditionally. I will make of you a great nation. All of this is in the context of Babel. Babel wanting to have unity, one people, one world, one blood. Imagine. And so Babel wants this, and it's this close to getting it. And it fails because the Lord stops it. And then he says, in the succeeding generations, he says to Abram, I'm going to make you into that. Everything Babel wanted, I'm going to make out of you. I'm going to make you that great nation. And I will bless you. And watch this. I will make your name great. We will make a great name for ourselves. The Lord says, no, you won't. I will splinter you and scatter you all over the face of the earth. But this guy, scattered out there along with all of the rest of you, I'm going to take him. I am going to reach into his life, and I will make a great name for him. I will do it, not you. I will make him a great nation. I'm not going to take your stuff and try to make greatness out of it, and I'm not going to countenance you doing it for yourself. So Abram, go. I will bless you. I will make you a great nation. I will make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you, I will curse. And in you, all the families of the earth. In the context of Babel, this is something brand new. You know all those families that I scattered? I changed their languages so they couldn't talk to each other. They're disunified. They're fighting each other. And the violence is getting worse. You know those people? Through you, all of them will be blessed. I will put this world back together again. In other words, God's promise to Eve that he would crush the serpent's head through her offspring, he has kept again and again and again. And in this moment, in Genesis chapter 12, he turns the page on human history and says, now I'm going to establish something different. I'm going to make a nation. And that nation is going to be the home of blessing for all peoples on the earth. I am going to do this to keep my promise to Eve, and I am making this promise to you unconditionally, Abram. What do we learn about God from this? He keeps his promises. He is faithful. He does what he says he's going to do. If you are here this morning believing God, there's only one reason. And that's because God kept his promise to Abraham. He blessed you through Abraham. And he made sure that you would know this by giving you this book. And saying, this is the record of all of my promises and the promises I have kept. I want you to know, and we are going to see this over and over and over again, that every time the line of faith fails after this, there's a reason it's going to keep going. And a reason that it's going to be blessed, a reason that ultimately the serpent's head is going to be crushed. The reason is my faithfulness, God's faithfulness to us, not our faithfulness to him. That's the kind of God we serve. Now, what else do we learn about God from this? We learn that, not to put too fine a point on it, God is the greater AI. He has a mind of his own. And you might talk to him, you might set a few little parameters for him at the beginning and say, well, tell me how to do this. Edit my little thing over here. Make me a picture of this. Do this little trick. But God has a mind of his own. He is not your app. He runs your life. The only question is whether you know it, and whether you believe it, and whether you trust him, and therefore love his control over your life. These are the only questions. So basically, I am calling you this morning to begin a journey rejecting your country, your kindred, and maybe even your father's house. Learn it different. Reject the app God of American evangelicalism. He will not customize for us, but he will seize in grace. He will seize our lives, and he will form us for his purposes. And what he does is good. But it's a long, long story. And we are part of something this morning that is so much deeper than anything we can imagine. And it goes so much further. So we're going to start this story here this morning. A promise of redemption that is the foundation for the whole rest of the Bible. It unlocks and interprets everything after it, literally. And I will show you this in a survey over the coming weeks. Ultimately, this is the beginning of an abiding knowledge of God. If you have this God, then you have a power operating in your life that you are adapting to, submitting to, a power that gives you the ability to navigate through calm waters or stormy waters because you know where you're going, you know the power inside of you, you have an abiding knowledge of God. And this decision is in front of you right now. The God of American Christianity is dead. The app God is done. But the true God, the living God, is still living. Whom will you serve?